Welcome back to the Cresco Wealthcast on Podbean. So you can find it on the website, cresco.podbean.com. Of course, you can always go to our website, crescowealthmanagement.com as well. We will have the links there. But please, while you're there, just take a subscribe. Subscribe to it. We also got a YouTube channel as well, Cresco Wealth Management on the YouTube. We are putting the pod up there as well. So I know we mentioned about Spotify the week prior. We're just going to put a hold on that because Spotify actually needs 5 episodes. So until we get to that 5 mark, it won't be available. So stay tuned for all intents purposes there. I am back with Peter Kollias, and I will tell you right now, first and foremost, we got to get the most important thing off the hop. Happy birthday.
Oh, thank you.
You're very welcome.
It is my birthday today.
It is. It is. Yeah, it's a good day. Mid-March.
March 16th, great day.
Great day, good day. Yeah, but speaking of days, you wanted to talk about something. As we said, this is going to be a podcast that's very situational, just having conversations that we're having in our offices, the hallways, top of mind, and keeping them very free and flowing. But we can't help being, yes, today is your birthday, but today also happens to be a day in a string of, let's just call it, events in the world.
Right.
And a lot of people are, I wouldn't say a lot of people are phoning us, but I will say that the rumblings in and around our questions, what's going on with the financial sector, namely in the United States, with Silicon Valley Bank, a lot of these regional banks, conversations, what's going to happen, and then it leads into what we said, events. And P, you wanted to have a take on it from a perspective standpoint.
And that's a great word. I mean, today's all about perspectives, right? And 1 year older, you start to have reflection, and you take world as it goes as far as different perspectives. And so with perspectives, also understand the term that we've been hearing a lot, whether it's in the media or otherwise, is unprecedented. We're living in these unprecedented times, these times that are unnerving. And, the reality is are we? And we have to take a moment and just put things in perspective, because if we don't put things in perspective, unfortunately, you then get caught up in the wrong stream. And what we want to do is bring ourselves back onto the right path and really have a clear mind and a clear perspective of what's actually happening and what is different. Right?
Yeah, what isn't unprecedented when we get to this point in time right now? Like today is, we've revealed, we're recording on March 16th at this point in time. Well, every second and minute thereafter of where we are is truly unprecedented.
That actually brings up one of my favorite quotes, and it's no man ever steps in the same river twice, for it's not the same river, and he's not the same man, right? And that
wasn't me, was it?
That was not you.
No, okay.
That was ancient Greek philosopher Heraclitus. And so what it's basically saying is that when you stand in a river, that river is always changing, and you as an individual, you're changing at the same time. And so change is not unprecedented, it's just normal. And that's the study of history is always changes. When you think you've gotten through one surprise, there's always one around the other corner. But really that surprise is something that the world has already, for the most part, gone through. If we take a moment here and we just pause and say, okay, well, we've just gone through a pandemic. We're still likely, talking about the pandemic, but is it something new? Well, pandemics, just recently reading a variety of different history books, and pandemics have been here since the dawn of time. And guess what? We as human beings are still here, and we still, as we do as human beings, we adapt to that change. So it's not unprecedented to have change, and it's not unprecedented to have these pandemics. It's just, unfortunately, taking us out of what we call a homeostasis place. Right.
It's funny you say, you're speaking on the health side of it. I always get a kick when nowadays there's a lot more focus or education, whatever label we want to put on eating healthier, doing the right things, maybe, longevity, sustenance. And at this point in time, we live longer on average than any other point in time in human history. And it's funny, you quoted a Greek, you and I are both Greek, and so we always laugh with our Greek perspective of our parents saying, back in my day, we used to do things and eat and do things like that. We never did these crafty things that you did. But we're actually in a very good place in time right now when it comes to health. But we never we never look at where we are today. We always look backwards.
That's right.
As to what happened and expecting that behavior to repeat or not pay the homage that it takes for where we are today. Yes, we do live longer today. We are in a better place in the world in terms of communications, so many different things where we are today.
And that's, again, back to perspectives, right? Perspective, excuse me. And I'm reading this recent book called The Rational Optimist, and it talks exactly like that. Say, well, we had simpler times back in the 1800s. Well, you didn't have running water. You didn't have electricity. Good luck going and trying to find a hospital. Good luck trying to find modern medicine. Yeah. How many look at our children, for instance, they get strep throat, right? Strep throat back in the day would have been something that would almost be catastrophic for a lot of people. Now, you go to the drugstore, you get a 15-minute test, and the next thing you give antibiotics, and you're up and running in 2 days. The magic of modern medicine and where we are. So we do have to take a pause and take perspective in the world that we live in. Yes, there is going to be change. There is going to be volatility. Wars in the past. Unfortunately, we're going through a conflict now. Inflation and higher interest rates. We've just we've been fortunate for the past 10, 15 years where we've been in a situation where we haven't had this volatility, and the volatility has just resurfaced, but it's nothing new.
And a generation that's also never experienced anything like this before on both sides. So there's one thing to be said is on the standpoint, okay, our grandparents, they went through a world war and they went through a pandemic. Okay, that's fine. That happened back then. And then there's this lull where not much has happened, called from the North American perspective, until we get to where we are today. And because we've never experienced it and all we heard about it was stories, we think, oh, well, that's all done in the past. We're just going through it.
That's right.
It's just this time period right now.
We're standing in the river is what's happening.
We're standing in
the river, right?
That's it. Yep.
And so then as listeners, the question might be, okay, thanks, Dimitri. Thanks, Peter. What are we talking about here? What does this have to do with the wealth management world that we are in? And where it comes down to is, again, taking perspective, taking inventory as to where we are to make sure we make the right decisions. We know that economic activity will have its ups and downs, and we know that ultimately recovery will come in the next chapter, right? As we start to move through this, as we start to move through the volatility, it's important for us to, again, take inventory, take perspective, knowing that this is not necessarily different than what we experienced in the past, and then to maintain that strategies that we have in place, which is effectively looking at the long term, being disciplined, and managing to those risks without taking any irrational movements. And so that's why it's very important, and I've repeated the word 10 times over, that we take a perspective on not only in time now, but what has happened over history and say, okay, where are we actually in all of this? And where's some of the good, right? Because, if we take a look at things right now, there is still a decent economy down south. It still is, jobs that are being created. And so corporate earnings are fairly decent at this point in time. And so we are actually at an okay spot, irrespective of what we're hearing about unsettling times, unprecedented times. Let's just take a moment and just pause and say, where are we actually in the spotlight of things?
Great point, Pete. And the other part to dig deeper is conversations that we've been having is, let's take a look at where we are. Let's take a look at also what we're doing. And there's a difference between what we're doing as a team and how we're managing things internally, what others are doing, what others are reporting and saying, and clearing all that smoke and getting right down to it. Are we in these areas? Are we positioned a particular way? Are we even affected to a degree that we see on TV? Because it's one thing, and this is the funny part, is TV has become a medium of communication that is structured for day to day. Same with social media. Social media even quicker. It is minute to minute, second to second. Content driven. Now, I don't want to pick on them that they're always the worst people in the world, but we have to take it in perspective. What they're saying and trying to achieve from an outlet standpoint is much, much different. Quite frankly, polar opposite than what we're trying to achieve from a long-term solution of positioning. And so we can't take a day trader's advice on the compounding effects of a portfolio.
Right. And by the same token, we can't take the advice of the day-to-day air the day-to-day content that needs to be filled on the air of the business news or the
Yes.
media. You know, it's a very good point, Dimitri. I had the opportunity to be down in New York November of last year, taking a tour through the Bloomberg offices. People have likely heard through Bloomberg, either their terminals or seen Bloomberg TV. And as we're walking, this is a large media and information stream. And as we're walking with one of the senior broadcasters there was a sense of massive frustration on his face because there was 3 booths that were completely empty, and it bothered him because he's saying this is missed content that we can push out to individuals. And so what I'm going with that is there always needs to be news and content pushed. And then we had the fortune of having a speaker who used to be a journalist, the travel individual.
Robin Ezra.
Yeah. And he had mentioned that during his journalism school, the first thing they teach you is go and find where the bad news is.
Yeah.
Right?
Go find where I remember that verbatim, go find where the bad news is.
Go find where the bad news is. And so why is that? Because that's a trigger for human beings, right? Not that I'm a scientist or we're a scientist, but we do spend a lot of time on the behavioral finance, right? And on the human's behavior is whenever there is fear, there's a trigger and there's a reaction to it. And that gets your attention. And so that's why all we hear is the negative perspective, and we want to go and say, okay, what is another perspective that we can take a look at, a more measured approach to this? And so it's a very valid point that you mentioned here is what we're hearing, what we're being forced to look at, and the speed of that media that's coming these days it is new. I mean, the speed of what that information is coming out is absolutely new.
High frequency trading, the speed in which news is delivered, the reaction to it as well. It's incredible. And so it's hyperbole at this point in time. And so, we've been having conversations, I know, with clients suggesting to them that times are a little bit different. Gone are the days of the trade ticket where you had to run it down the second floor and there was a lag time. And because the one thing that I get from, I hate saying older generation, but relative to age, older generation.
Watch, it's my birthday, so I might be the older one.
Let's call it baby boomer and above, is, Dimitri, we never seen this before. We've never seen this type of activity before. This type of volatility is something that we do got to get used to because of the factors that are present today as well. And you look, and it's one thing to see what's happening, but then the market reaction and the reaction to the market reaction perpetuates things in bigger strides. It's almost as if the stock tickers now look like a lie detector test of someone who's just not telling the truth. But that has become a new normal. And I find that we got to remove ourselves even from that noise to say, listen, it's not as depicted. This is just market reaction today. But because of everything else that's happening, apples to apples, it's not as bad as you see.
Exactly. Remove the noise. That's a great term, the noise, right?
Yep.
And the noise is louder. It's more amplified, but it doesn't really necessarily change what we have to look at, right? And so that's a valid point. Yep. Taking this all in one more time is as we continue with what we would term maybe a tumultuous year, or what people would term an unprecedented year. In our mind, yes, we've seen a lot of this in the past in different varieties, in different ways. The key is, once again, is come back to your disciplines.
Yes.
Come back to your disciplines of generating income, to your disciplines of tax efficiency, diversification, looking for and ensuring that you have your financial plan, have your path forward, and you're sticking to those disciplines for the long term and not being completely pulled off that path.
And one thing as well I want to point out, Pete, is, and for all you listeners, pay attention to one thing. We could have done this podcast going down the rabbit hole, dissecting letter for letter, word for word, what Silicon Valley Bank, that story. We could have gone down. Yes, that only gets you so far. We could talk about this till the cows come home. The other side of the coin is, what are we doing about it? What have we already been doing about it, and why we do things to not get handcuffed by these events when they do happen. So again, if some of you are listening saying, okay, well, you didn't really go down the rabbit hole. No, we didn't. And a lot of the times we won't, because we have to take that disciplined overall perspective and stay the course of what we're doing. Because tomorrow it's just going to be another name with another circumstance in another sector. And it's not that the conversations are the exact same, the discipline is.
That's exactly right. You tied it back to the beginning where I said the study of history is surprises. And what surprises are coming around the next corner. And so we know there's always going to be another surprise, but what we don't know is what that surprise is. And you can try your hardest to try to forecast it. I've been doing this for a long, long time, and rarely do you see someone forecast it correctly. Because surprises are just exogenous, and you don't know when it's going to happen, what's going to happen. It's how you react to it and how you manage to it. And that's why we have the discipline and the approach that we have in place.
Oh, I love this topic, Pete. We should do like a 10-part series. I think we're going to revisit this over and over and over again because there's so much content. But speaking of content, download the content, listen to the content. Cresco.podbean.com, CrescoWealthManagement.com. The YouTube channel is Cresco Wealth Management as well. Please like and subscribe to these channels. We're going to be doing these podcasts hopefully on a weekly basis, but more frequently, definitely moving forward. And of course, if you have a topic, just send us an email, message us. On those forums, you can message directly as well, or in the comments section. Something that's top of mind for you, we're more than happy to discuss it. And come on in.
Come say hi.
Come say hi.
We've got good coffee.